Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Nearman Condition, a channel where you can be part of a positive and honest community. I am Domavex, and I have a panel here to launch the DC Finest trade paperback collections. And we today are graced to have the greatest comics historian on Earth today, none other than Mark Waid. How are you doing today?
Good, sir. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for being here, and thank you for launching the show with us.
Sure, happy to.
Really appreciate it. And of course, I've got two panelists with me. The first of which is Omar on the bottom. Who are you?
I'm the Uncanny Omar. You may know me from this channel. But thank you so much for being here today to kick off this celebration of something really cool that DC is doing, and that is the DC Finest books that we're going to be talking about today.
Indeed. And who are you on the bottom of me, Kurtis?
My name is Kurtis Findlay, and I have a podcast called the Epic Marvel Podcast, but we're not talking about Marvel today. We're talking about DC. I probably should have changed that little thing at the bottom there.
It's never too late. Never too late, my friend.
Okay, I'm going to take care of that while you chat.
Okay.
So yeah, big thank you to Mark for being here. My gosh.
Sure, you bet.
A true comic historian that has probably already mapped these books out in his head. Because I know I played that game. I played the game of
oh yeah, sure.
This, and this. And I would love to see what that whiteboard or that I guess a shared document would look like. When we're looking at the mapping of these books and the years of these books. Because we've had, Marvel has been doing this for 11 years now with the Epic collections.
Right.
And DC just started it this month, but they are going big with this.
They're going big. It's like almost one a week, right? For a while. Yeah,
absolutely. It's insane. Yeah. And they are doing
a wide variety.
Yeah.
It's a wide variety of titles.
Peacemaker is getting a DC Finest, which is just crazy. Like to think about. And so I'm loving the fact that they're, borrowing from here. It's not just Golden Age, it's not Silver Age, and much like the Epic collections are coming out of order, which me as a fan, I love that.
Yeah,
because Kurtis and I have what was the word we came up with? We have this word called gappiness. I think whenever you fill in that gap of a missing era in Epic collection format, like the 70s or 80s, whatever book it is, and that's what it's going to feel like whenever you fill in that gap with a missing book from whatever collection you're collecting.
Right. It's also really smart strategically as a publisher because, people, there's still some of us who lament the loss of the DC archives who, from 20 years ago or whatever, as the guy who kicked off, as the editor who kicked off the archives program. I get it. That the problem with numbering your volumes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is that it's harder to keep the earlier stuff in continuous print, right? So no one's going to start reading Wonder Woman Archives with Wonder Woman Archives number 7, right? You've got to make sure you've got all the previous ones in stock, or else you're just losing sales. No one's going to pick up volume 5 without picking up volumes 1 through 3, 4. So that's why you're smart to just move around like the Epics do, like Fantagraphics has done with those great Carl Barks Donald Duck collections where they're issuing them complete but not in order, which I think is really smart. And they're not, they're numbered subtly inside and one of the indicias, but it doesn't really matter because they're not continuity anyway. So I salute this notion of we're not going to go in strict chronological order.
Well, and also we've seen DC do publishing in order so many times already. The archives started from the beginning. They had like Superman Chronicles started from the beginning. They had their Silver Age or the Golden Age Omni start from the beginning. It's like I just want to get past that part already, and let's get to some other stuff.
Right. There's so much else. There's so much other DC material that should be collected, and at a price point that makes sense. Remind me what the price point is on the Finest.
$39.99.
Yeah.
Where's your typical, and your your DC, your Marvel Epics are what now? 44, 49?
$44.99 or $49.99, right? Yeah.
Okay. So I like the price point.
Yeah.
and I like the uniformity of the line. I have a good feeling about it.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, go ahead.
I think one of the coolest things that I remember the Epic line doing when it first kicked off at Marvel was we had that Iron Man omnibus. So the very first Epic they gave us was like the book that goes right after the omnibus.
Right,
So
right.
to me, I love my omnis. I love big oversized hardcovers. I was like, oh, this is going to be I called them like a placeholder for an omnibus one day, even though
Sure.
that was, oh my gosh, 11 years ago. And now I kept and I love the epics, and I kept them all, and I even have some that double dip with the omnis that I have because they're mapped differently, just like these will be mapped differently.
Yep.
And that's what I enjoy about this. Like, well, even looking at the Wonder Woman book, like Wonder Woman here, this is the Gail Simone era Wonder Woman, but it also contains issues that were not written by Gail Simone, unlike the omnibus. Like the omnibus is creator centric,
Right.
whereas this kicks off with Five of a Kind. And then we also have your story in here, Mark.
I didn't know that. Which one?
Yeah,
Jerry Ordway.
Oh, that one. Okay.
With George
George
Perez, yeah, the Power Girl and Wonder Woman.
That's
story.
cool. Okay.
Yeah, so not collected in omnibus format, but because it fits into the chronological order of Wonder Woman, it is collected in here. That's awesome. I love when they do that. I know Kurtis and I are big fans of like leave nothing behind, and it makes me think that okay, they've really thought about like ahead of time about what is going to go on in each book. What not to leave out.
The mapping here I know is extensive and it's complete, and I've helped advise on some of this stuff just to make sure we've not forgotten this one off or that thing, or does this make sense in terms of publishing chronology and so forth. So it's a good group up there putting this editorially group putting this stuff together. I know DC's had a shaky, like, you know, in the late 2010s, there was sort of a shaky period where we weren't getting as much of this material, and what we were getting wasn't the best. But there's been, with the most recent installation of the trade paperback team that's in place now, with Reza and his people, they're banging it out. I mean, they're really coming out with bangers. They really are invested in getting it right, which I love.
I think we've seen that with the Omnis, the Golden Age and Silver Age Omnis have been just remarkable in terms of the sheer amount of output and the quality of the restorations that have gone into it is like a great example of this current team doing tremendous work. Absolutely.
And also just the mapping of it, just the making sure that we're not leaving anything behind if we can help it.
And that's what has me excited the most is what's going to go in these books. What makes what makes it into the final round as to what needs to be in here, and when it fits into the reading order. I'm really curious about the next few volumes of Batman, because what they're doing is they're putting Batman and Detective Comics together.
Right, smart.
Oh, I love that. And now we're gonna get to see. I think the next one is The Killing Joke.
Yep.
I don't know. Has that been updated? The contents of that, has that been updated?
It's the same. It's the same as previously. They updated the contents for the Batman one, the one we just got. But yeah, for Killing Joke. Want to get to lots of people here in the chat, Mark. Very excited to hear you talk about. But just wanted to get a super chat quickly. Going by years is such a great idea, especially since DC has almost 100 years of content at this point. Also sending love and sympathies, Omar. So 100% agreed on the years.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I like the years idea. I think it's really cool. I mean, it's similar to what the epics do, right, Kurtis? Like, we don't have a volume number on the spine; we have a volume number on the back. They just go by the years here, but they highlight the years that you're collecting. And as of right now, I mentioned this on my video that 2011 is the end point, meaning that is right before the Flashpoint era or New 52 era.
Right.
As of now, because they can always add more years later.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I predict that I don't know this for a fact, but my educated guess would be one of the reasons that there are so many volumes that are disparate, like some of the ones that are the obvious ones, Batman, Superman, Flash, some of the ones that are not so obvious, like the science fiction one or Justice Society, is really just a way of getting out in front as soon as you can and figuring out from market response, okay, what is the market going to bear on this? Does it all have to be Batman and Superman? We hope not. Is it going to be, is there an appetite for more science fiction ones, more anthology ones, more character centric ones like Peacemaker? Somehow.
Well, a lot of this content is so new to me. I am not typically a DC reader, and so experiencing this stuff for the first time I'm really excited about the oddball ones like Peacemaker because I just don't know that one at all.
Sure.
The science fiction one has me super excited, and so I got this Batman book um, just this weekend, and I've already plowed through half of it, and it's absolutely amazing to me because now it's published in chronological order. There's never been a collection of this stuff where you've had all of this content all grouped together. So I'm
Right.
reading it issue by issue as it's laid out here, and really getting a feel for what people were going through when they were buying these off the stands. They were going through, the Alan Davis, Mike Barr stuff for Detective Comics, with Batman and Robin are still fighting on giant pool tables, and then all of a sudden we get year one issue, like the first chapter. It's like, holy cow! I can't imagine what people were thinking when that was coming off the stands way back in the day. I'm sure a lot of people out there were actually buying them off the stands and can think that, but to
That would be
experience
me.
that, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's just remarkable. And of course, I've read year one many times,
But to read it in context is
but
different.
to read it in this context is a completely different game, and
Yep.
that's what I think the value with these really are going to be.
I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest one, isn't it, Curtis? That one's got 632 pages, if I'm not mistaken, because they started
Yeah,
with
it's pretty big.
post-crisis. 632,
Mhm.
and it is the first time that year one and year two are collected in the same book.
Right.
And it's so weird to have year two collected in a collected edition without having Full Circle. Like, I
Right.
remember flipping through here going, wait a
Yeah.
minute, here's Full Circle. And then I had to
Right.
think, wait, no, Full Circle didn't happen until like 91. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't
Yeah,
be in this
a
book.
few volumes down the road. Yeah.
So it's crazy to think like, oh man, that is so cool that they're putting this in order. And
Yeah.
it's just, you're so accustomed to these collections that have come out over the years that you know what to expect to have Full Circle at the end of year two.
For sure. And speaking of which, I want to thank Kurtis for making these amazing slideshows so we can talk about some of these books that we are going to talk about. Wonderful designs on these, Kurtis. And of course, the first one that we are getting, and hopefully get to spotlight and ask Mark a couple of questions on this with year one and year two. I guess my question in addition to this would be, we're talking about the context of it all, because you started your career at DC as an assistant editor, right, on books like Secret Origins. Was it always DC's plan post-crisis to just sort of have Batman like take some of the Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams elements and push him towards a darker direction? Was that always the intention, during this time? If you have any insight on that.
I think so. I mean, there really wasn't. All right, let's do some history. So before Crisis was completely gelled, right, before it was completely fully formed, there were several plans in place. One of them was to relaunch all the books with the number one, including Batman. And they took different pitches from different creators at the time. I know Walt Simonson pitched a Superman take before John Byrne was connected to it. I know Steve Gerber had pitched a Wonder Woman one, if I recall correctly. And so they weren't sure what to do there. Then, John signed up. Then Frank Miller wanted to do something Batman, but he didn't have time to jump in with Batman year one right off the bat. Right, because again, Dark Knight was happening around that same time. So the other sticking point historically was and DC did it with New 52, but it was the first time. The question was, do we continue the numbering of these books, or do we relaunch everything across the line with the number one after Crisis number 12? And ultimately, the thinking was, because the market was different than it is today, or it was with New 52, the feeling was retailers are just not going to know how to order a bunch of new number ones all at once. They're just not going to, because there's patterns to this stuff. Retailers order issue 75 of something based on their sales for 72, 73, 74. I don't care what book it is. I don't care what's happening in the book. That's the place they start, right? So trying to launch so many new number ones at the time didn't make a lot of sense to them. So that's why you get, Man of Steel and Superman number one, Wonder Woman number one, but Batman continues with the standard numbering. So I don't think in that sense that there was an intent to shift Batman away specifically any differently than he had been in the if you read the volume before this one, I don't think you'd see that much of a change in the character. Like Crisis wasn't really a dividing point for Batman the same as it was for a lot of the other characters.
Right. Yeah, you can definitely tell in those issues that are collected in here.
Yeah, but I'm saying if you went back and looked at whatever the volume before this eventually is going to be, I think it'd be pretty consistent. I don't think you'd see much of a
tonal
change.
right.
Much tonal difference, right?
Yeah.
Do you think when it comes to Batman, Mark, that they'll be adding things from Legends of the Dark Knight, like stories like I think of stories like Venom that play a big part later on in the history of Batman.
I mean, I would think, I haven't spoken to them as much about the more modern stuff, but I imagine that they will. I think, again, all this stuff is character specific rather than book specific or title specific, which, again, another thing that is really cool and makes it a little different from the Epic books. And I don't know, but my gut instinct is to say yes. When we get to Legends of the Dark Knight, they'll just start weaving it in like the same way they've done here with Detective and Batman.
Love it. Yeah, that's good. Oh, man, that's good. I know people probably want Legends of the Dark Knight as their own collection because in chronological order, yes, it takes place in the past, but it was coming out in publishing order during this time as well. And then we also get Shadow of the Bat.
Right.
And then it all gets messed up when we have our first crossovers because then it is part of continuity, like part of now.
Right.
This is something really interesting too. I don't know if you noticed this, Kurtis, but when I did my overview, so year one is using the original colors. Year one is
great.
Yeah, I thought that was so cool.
Yeah.
But year two, it looks like they're using the deluxe colors. And I was wondering what drove them to make that decision. Maybe the paper stock that they're using, because I haven't read year two in single issues in so long that I thought, wait, that looks like the new color. So I did get my single issue out, and it does have like the same colors that they've been using for the deluxe edition of year two. I don't have a problem with it, but I do know fans of. Go ahead, Kurtis.
It's not just the colors. They're also replaced the individual credit pages from each issue with just one generic credit page, which I assume is taken from the deluxe edition of the book. And there's some really nice art. There's some really nice art on those credit pages that could have been in there that they're not putting in there for some reason. But they did include it with the year one chapters. If I can find one of those here, like. That's there.
Yeah.
But the year two ones are not there, which is too bad.
And sometimes that's really, again, I don't know. I'm just giving you my best educated guess. Is a lot of times that is really about what's available. It's not. I know it's not sloppiness or anything on the part of the collected editions department. They're really good and really scrupulous. But sometimes it's a matter of, okay, this stuff is available because of whatever choices were made with keeping archival material 35 years ago when we did the first year two collection. Is that original stuff still available? Is it easily available? Is the deluxe stuff a lot more readily available? Does it need less reconstruction? Those are factors that come into play here too.
Absolutely. And with the $40 price point, like this is a budget line of books. And so they are not going to put in
high-end Toshin level,
yeah, exactly. So, and you can tell going through this because the blue on Batman is different depending on which issue you're looking at. And so it's like these issues were restored at a certain time in the past, and these ones were restored at another point in the past. But this collection is just bringing those files all together and collecting them all in the book.
Right.
Because, like you said, that's what's available.
And another difference would be that with the Wonder Woman ones, we would have had digital files to work off of, which would have been much easier. Whereas anything before the 2000s, we wouldn't have had digital files to work off of. So they're kind of stuck with whatever they can pull from the archives.
I will say that one of the coolest things that we haven't brought up yet, or at least it was to me, was the actual DC Bullet logo.
Yeah. Yep.
I was so happy to see that. That was like, that was nostalgia for me. And then to have it on the new books, that was really cool. So I'm glad that they were able to change it right before these went to print.
Yeah.
For sure. Could you, as we have you with this time, Mark, Omar is a really, really big fan of Batman Year 2.
I love Year 2. I love it.
I would love to know your take on Mike W. Barr's Batman Year 2 with him holding a gun, the Reaper, all that. If you have one, at least.
I liked it at the time. I like Mike's work in general. I like that he was bringing something to the Batman books that wasn't being brought by Max Allan Collins. I think was doing the Batman books at the time.
Yeah,
and there was just a more playful, fun energy to it without being goofy. And I think I like that. I responded well to that. There's a couple of places in Mike's stories that make me shiver a little bit. There's places where Batman's regard for human life isn't terribly high. I want to say there's a scene in one of them where Batman keeps himself from being shot with an assault weapon by just grabbing another goon and using him as a human shield.
I just read that one.
Yeah. So that part doesn't sit well with me, but I thought Year 2 was good. I mean, it's no Year 1. Year 1 blew the roof off the joint. And again, one of the advantages you have of having me here talking about this stuff is I was there at the moment. So it's just so hard for me to explain the paradigm shift between Batman 403 and Batman 404, and we're all looking at this like, oh my God, we're seeing comics change before our very eyes.
Yeah.
Without Batman Year 2, there's no Mask of the Phantasm.
That's true. The greatest Batman movie of all time. Yep.
Thank you.
Right?
Yep.
Heard it from the man himself.
Yep.
I just can't imagine, like, you're reading on the stands like in 1980, 87, like, oh my gosh, like when in Batman's history is like being affected by those specific 4 issues. Like, I mean, it must have been completely monumental. It was
mind blowing. It really was. I mean, was there stuff that didn't sit well with me then that I'm okay with now? Yeah. I mean, I didn't love the fact that we've changed the history of Gordon to where Barbara didn't even seem to exist during that time, and it was another kid instead. But I've made my peace with that. I was a lot more continuity conscious in 1987 and a lot more picky about my continuity than I am 40 years on.
Okay.
I'm being a stickler for continuity can hurt so much at times. Oh my gosh.
Really can. I mean, you've when I write stuff, I try very, very hard to do no harm to continuity, but every great once in a while, you're going to get a better story. You're just going to get a better story rather than have to feel beheld to or beholden to something that happened in one issue of Action Comics 35 years ago, that no one remembers.
And I think that
we'll remember now what they have DC Finest.
There you
go. Now people can complain about continuity as they're reading future volumes going, wait a minute, that did not happen in Year 2.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I am curious how all of like Long Halloween is going to fit in here too. Like when?
Great question.
Because that is the retcon to Year 2. So at what point do you put it in the publishing order? Yeah, it's so fun to just talk about this and then try to guess when they're going to put things in and where they're going to put them.
Same with Batman the Cult, right? Like sometime after
that has to be in here,
right?
Like, that has to be in here because there's an early Jason Todd story.
We go on to the next slide.
If I were doing this, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm just going to say if I were in charge of this program, I would worry about that stuff less because that stuff is already in print in collections, and so I think part of the goal here is give you as much material that isn't in print and isn't readily available. So, my
That's great to hear.
prediction would be we won't get to that kind of stuff for some time yet. Maybe I don't know. But again, if I were doing it as somebody who's been a publisher, that would be my instinct is to go with. And you can look at the lineup they've got. I mean, it's a nice mix of here's stuff we can take straight from the archive files or the omnibus files, and here's stuff that no one expected. So
Interesting
anyway,
stuff. Thank
next
you.
slide. Yeah.
So
there you go.
We got DC team ups chase to the end of time, and I'm very interested, I guess, in this one specifically, not only for the art showcase, right, with Jose Luis Garcia Lopez and Chris, everyone else in there, but they're also marketing team ups as sort of we'll put Brave and the Bold here, we'll put Presents here, and I'm interested to see if they're gonna put stuff like World's Finest in here, or other team up books like that, or other miscellaneous team ups, and how they're deciding to push this out. So
I would think if they're going to put World's Finest in there, they would have put it in this volume.
You think World's Finest by itself could carry, it could carry the title?
I think, given that it's Superman and Batman, I think you probably could. Yeah.
Oh, and then I guess if you do call it Superman, Batman, World's Finest, then you can collect all the other stuff too, not just World's Finest, right? Like Jeff Loeb's era of Superman, Batman.
Exactly. You can exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Ah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, I like these. This is really cool. That this is something that Marvel has done with the Marvel 2-in-1s, but we still don't have the Marvel team up books. It's something that we've been craving for so long. And DC is just like, well, here we are. Like this stuff, I don't think, and I know I don't have it I did not have it in showcase format, so I don't think it was available in showcase format.
No, the Brave and Bold stuff was available in omnibus format. But I love the fact that this is available to people who don't feel like dropping $125 on that volume, or people who, people who are willing to double dip just so they can get the DC Comics Presents stuff. As a publisher, I'm fine with that too.
Excellent. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, same here. So you are the biggest. You even told me this when I interviewed you a couple of weeks ago, that there is no one who loves Legion history more than you do.
More than me. Paul Levitz is probably a tie, but no one more than me. Yeah.
I gotta ask, because I wish I did more research on this, but just because of time and strapped, and I haven't read much Legion again other than your work. I don't know much about this. I don't know if it's a good jumping on point. Is there any way you could pitch this to me, as a new fan of, if you want to buy Legion, this is what you're getting, and what are you getting with this volume?
That's a good question. I do think it's a good jump on point, because the art took a real turn toward the modern about this time, when it was fairly staid for a long time. And this is somebody who loves Kurt Swan more than anybody, but it doesn't hold up in today's market as well as a lot of the Dave Cockrum stuff that you're going to see in here. There's some really good stuff here. It's also not the best. It also is a weird representation of the Legion during this time too, because those Action Comic stories are very short. They're backups to the Superman book, Superman feature at the time, and so the writers concentrated on maybe 2 or 3 different characters in every story, and not your legion of superheroes. So it's going to be until you get to, the Superboy 190, 191, whatever. When you get into that era, late in the book, where you're going to get a lot of bombastic, big, 25 members at a time Legion of Superhero stories.
And this has been collected in omnibus format before, right? This is towards the end of the Legion Silver Age run, I think.
Actually, it hasn't. I don't think it's been collected in omnibus form. It's been collected.
There was. I didn't get it, but there was a third Legion omnibus. So
was there? Then in that case, yeah, it's probably in there. I wish I could remember off the top of my head. I don't remember.
So, but it's really cool that this is where they're this is the very first Legion book.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure, Dom, you've never read any of this stuff, but you'll notice there is no Legion of Superhero
There's no.
collected in here. It's all backup stories like
I have a shirt of the cover. And
cool.
it's a shirt that I keep, wearing around, like if I'm like at a comic related thing or if I'm going to the shop or whatever. But yeah, like there's, I guess like in your, like where you said, Mark, like earlier about like you have the backups in action and adventure, which were staunchly Superman related stories. Because, they didn't have a book at the time, up
Right.
until we get to the, okay, I see. So interesting stuff.
Yeah.
How many volumes would be before this for Legion of Superheroes?
Oh God. How big is this
Is
one?
there a lot? They're all about 600 pages.
So what do you think, Omar? Like 3 maybe, because the omnibuses were somewhere in the 800 page count, something like that. So
the Silver Age Legion, I only had the first 2.
right.
They weren't that big. I really want to say they were about 600 pages each.
Then you'd probably do 3, because the way they're making sure that they're folding in other stories with these characters that appear elsewhere, and they're being more inclusive than they were with the kind of sound like RFK Jr. all of a sudden. Sorry. They're being more inclusive than they were in the omnibus. So I know there's a ton of Legion guest appearances that could fold into this line. I don't know what the mapping is. I can't imagine that you need 4 to go before this. So this probably is volume 4.
Okay.
I think so too. I think this would be a volume 4 now that I'm just looking at it.
Yeah.
One of the things I wish they had done,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of makes sense for these books though. I wish they had actually started like in the very back. I know you don't have it, Mark, but I can show you. Like in the very back, you have the years, which I think this is wonderful.
Yeah.
So you have, the year, it goes all the way from 1938 to 2011. And one of the things that I wish they had done, and I get it, because it does look really nice. I wish they had started the year that the characters actually came out. Because as a completist and being new to comics, like if I were looking at this, I'd be like, well, when is that Wonder Woman volume coming
that's
out?
interesting. Yeah. Where are my Legion comics from 1941?
Yeah, and I wonder if they're going to change that later on.
That's a really good point. Never thought about that. That's a really good point.
Because I get it, it's respecting the entirety of the DC universe timeline. But for me as a completist and if I was new to comics and collecting all these, I'd be like, where's those 30s comics of the Legion of Superheroes?
Right. How am I going to know I'm on volume 1? That's interesting. I'll bring it up to the gang at the DC publishing house.
We appreciate it.
Sure.
Oh yeah, it's just something very, very small that I thought, that's
good point though. I never thought about that.
Because it would be nice to know how many books are if they start, because not everyone was created right in 1938. Like you have some characters created in the 50s, 60s, 80s.
And people say Omar's not good for anything, and they're wrong.
Hey, you've been talking to my wife again.
Oh my goodness. But we appreciate the input for Legion. I think this is the one format. If you want to talk about completionism and trying to get everything from a foothold on when they started to literally up to 2011 before they rebooted everything. I mean, you were talking about a line made for DC Finest. I think you're talking about Legion of Superheroes. Yeah. I don't know if there's a better way to get everything comprehensively collected under one blanket that isn't creator centric or anything of the sort. I mean, you want to talk about that? It's this,
or isn't $125 for an omnibus, right?
Exactly. Or when it goes out of print, it goes for a lot of money. Like
that's just it. And this stuff is going to be much easier to keep in print. Because it's a lot less expensive to keep in print than it is to keep omnibuses in print, meaning that as a company, you're publishing a bunch of extra copies, hoping that someday they'll sell, or reprinting a bunch of copies that cost a lot of money. This stuff, because the price point is so much lower, it's going to be much easier to keep this stuff in print.
For sure. Next book we got on the docket is none other than Gardner Fox's and Mike Sikowski's Justice League of America. I got finished reading this while I was over in Florida because I needed to see what was up with Silver Age JLA, and I hadn't been accustomed to it. But I have so much more of an appreciation for this, like, you know, like after so many years. Because I mean, this specifically with the Bridge Between Earth story, which was a 2-off, like I thought, man, like you want to talk about the template for event books for every single event book in the future. I mean, this is it, right? Like
Yeah,
we don't
absolutely.
have Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Right. Without
We
this stuff. No. Yeah.
we had this. So I think
I think
if you're
this
talking,
volume,
Go
I
ahead.
think this volume contains a few of the different crossovers between these
Yeah.
characters,
One,
between these
two,
two teams.
three. Yeah, it would have
It's a
4
lot.
of them in here.
Yeah.
'Cause they did it
Yeah.
on an annual basis at this time, right?
Right. 46, 47, 55, 56, 64, 65,
Mhm.
and 71, 72. Yeah. So I think no 72. I'm not sure. 71. No, 72 is a prequel to the next crossover. So 3.
This is the one with
Okay.
Red Tornado, isn't it?
365 or 64, 65 is Red Tornado.
Yeah. Oh man. I really like this volume. I didn't I don't know how the rest of collectors are going to react to something like this, because it is a lot of crossovers, and
Yeah.
that really introduced. I mean, but we do live in a era where a multiverse movie has
Right.
won an Oscar, so
Right.
I'm pretty sure the notion of the multiverse, most people understand it, right?
Oh
It's
yeah,
not
at this
the
point,
headache that
yeah.
it used to be.
And this stuff is presented very simply. This stuff is, and they're really leaning into the Justice Society. I mean, if you look at, I want to say it's issue 64, the Justice League doesn't appear in that issue at all. It's all Justice Society from start to finish.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. And that just showed the popularity of those characters at that time. Yeah, this stuff is solid. I had a lot of fun rereading these stories, and they're
solid's a really good word. Yeah.
The ad placements that have been replaced by the bullet, I also like when they do that.
Yeah.
This is when they were experimenting with ads during the internal artwork.
Mhm.
I'm glad they don't do that anymore, by the way.
Hey, the half-page ads, no.
Oh
Everybody's
my!
glad.
Can you imagine writing a story and like being told, "Oh, there's going to put an ad right there. Move
Right.
that over to the next page."
when I read them digitally, they have the like usually black crossbars because they need to indicate that like something else used to be there, was
Right.
replaced by something else. But no, as a first time reader, I mean, I think this is where that was like, hey, like maybe Silver Age is like something that I should be interested in getting into.
There's some cool stuff. Yeah. What else we got?
Yeah. Next up, we got
my favorites.
Doom Patrol, the world's strangest heroes. Something that I had to delve into after I read Grant Morrison's run on Doom Patrol and Rachel Pollack's run on Doom Patrol, sort of to see where the inspirations came from it. And man, you want to talk about some of the wildest stories out there? I think this is the volume. No,
it's amazing. If you've never jumped in to this, you will be surprised at how modern a lot of this stuff feels in this book. The Doom Patrol was DC's first attempt to do sort of a Marvel style approach to the heroes. It was written by a guy named Arnold Drake, who was the smartest, hippest, most astute writer up there. He was very good, but more to the point, he understood why Marvel was doing well, where the rest of the DC staff was, oh, this is just an aberration. That's just crap comics. But Arnold realized that character conflicts, having characters that don't all speak with the same voice or agree with each other all the time, having friction within a team is what Marvel was doing well, and they could do that here. And so you read the Doom Patrol stuff, and these are people who sometimes hate each other. I mean, even more than, Ben hated Reed sometimes. There was a lot of friction here. They still got the job done, but some solid characterization in a book that otherwise, you look at Justice League at the same time, and every single one of those lines of dialogue in that previous volume that we just showed could have been spoken by anybody else in the book.
Mm-hmm. I love the distinction that every single character, like you could pull in from Robot Man and it'd feel like okay, Cliff sounds a lot different than Rita. Rita sounds a lot different than Larry, and you have to give credit. Like, I don't think, you have the Grant Morrison, hey, we're going to have the Chief do something super suspect here. I'm not going to spoil it, like, without this specific book.
And Grant would tell you the same thing. Yeah.
Want to get to a super chat from our good friend Atomic Hound, loving compact editions and now finest. Not to mention the weekly single comics are as fun as I can remember.
Cool.
Thanks so
Thanks.
much for many great stories over the years, including Batman and Robin Year One and the upcoming JLU, Mark.
No, my pleasure. I mean, Batman and Robin Year One just cooks because Chris Samnee is doing his dream project and it shows. And JLU is me and Dan Mora. So if you like what we did in World's Finest, this is even more inclusive because now we're working in the modern day DC universe and we can pull in any and all DC characters that you've heard of and never heard of.
I guess here's
I didn't get to talk to you about Batman and Robin Year One. I'm so excited for that book, Mark.
Thank you. It is. I'm busy working on issue 7 today. It's, we're ahead of the game, so there won't be any schedule bumps or anything. And it's just so much fun to write a Batman and Robin with a slightly different take than we've seen before, which is they don't always get along very well. And when you think about it, I'm not sure why Bruce and Dick would get along together instantly, because they had the one tragedy that they share, but nothing else about their lives is the same at all.
Yeah.
And that's the thing we're really leaning into, is there is real friction. If you didn't know that Batman and Robin was eventually going to be a team, if you were just reading this book and had no idea that they were actually going to end up being a team, you would be wondering as you're reading this book whether or not they're actually going to end up together.
Oh man. Okay.
What a
okay.
pitch.
Mark, I gotta take my shot. Mark, hear me out.
Yeah.
Batman and Robin, Year 2, Return of the Reaper. Just saying. I think that's
See, then if that's the case, you've got to tell a better story than Batman Year 2, and you've got to tell a better story than Mask of the Phantasm. And I don't know if that can be done. I don't know that I've got it in me. I mean, those are you can't just retread that stuff. You got to up your game.
I like that pitch, Omar. I like that.
Yeah.
We gotta get an absolute at some point of your and Chris's work on Batman and Robin Year One.
I hope so. Well, we got the black and white edition that's coming out, the Noir edition that's coming out.
I pre-ordered that at my comic shop.
Beautiful looking.
An absolute edition. Man, you know how hard I've been pushing Marvel to do with the Lux edition of the Black Widow book that you all worked on. It'd be cool to see that and Captain America together in one book. Honestly.
It really would. Yeah.
Oh, there's a horrible super chat from our buddy Josh. Mark, do you also think Batman is a 6 out of 10? First of all, that is taken out of context. They asked me how I would rate Batman as an occult detective. I said about a 6 out of 10. I thought I was being fair.
As an occult detective?
Yes.
I give him a 7. Because 6 is too close to average. 6,
really?
Yeah, well, think about it. 6
Scrappy Doo is average.
Of 10, 6 is, Superman is at level 6. I mean, for God's sake, it's Robin's at 6. I mean, he's still the world's greatest detective. I'd put him at a high 7, low 8.
Wow. Okay. What about Tim Drake? See, I rank Tim
I would put Tim Drake. I would put Tim Drake lower because he's a great detective, but he's also a lot more technologically grounded than Batman is. I think he's always been more of a tech kid.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, let's just scrap the rest of this and now talk about how we would rank as occult detectives.
My goodness, occult detectives. One more book in here. Plastic Man.
I forgot about this one.
You gotta pitch the Jack Cole police comics over this one. What made Plastic Man, which you eventually used in your JLA run, so special during this era of comics?
That Jack Cole made it. I mean, and no one else could have done this book than the guy who created it, Jack Cole. His work, especially once you get past the first year or so when he's still learning the ropes and trying to figure out when you get into the second and third year of Plastic Man in police comics, it's fluid, it is energetic, it is funny, it is just the caricatures are terrific. There's such energy to that book that is not like, it's better than anything that most other publishers were publishing at the same time. Howard Chaykin and I agree. The fact that this was originally done by a company called Quality Comics, and that name, Howard and I agree, is perfect because you could take a random sampling of DC Comics from that era. You could take a random sampling of timely comics from that era, and they'd be really hit and miss. But the quality stuff, they had the best artists, they had some of the best writers. That era of comics with quality comics is phenomenal. When you got Lou Fine and you've got Reed Crandall and you've got Jack Cole, that's just they had a murderer's row of artists. And so this book is genuinely amusing. I mean, really, I think it holds up.
This is one that I'm looking forward to the most, I think. Jack Cole's work looks unlike anything else that was coming
Right.
out at the time, and it's so appealing. And I love funny books, so I'm
Yeah.
really looking forward to this one.
I love that cover.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I'm excited for this one too. I honestly forgot about this one, and that's awesome. They're doing Plastic Man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I need a Mark Waid Doctor Strange omnibus. Sorry, not DC related.
Dude, me too. I mean,
It's perfect.
we've done two trades that collect everything, but I'm totally in for a bigger book. You bet.
Yeah, make the Surgeon Supreme towards the end. Oh, it's enough for one omnibus. Absolutely.
There's backup stuff that we could do because there's at least one issue that's drawn that never saw print because of COVID. There's at least 2 scripts that are written that you never saw because of COVID. So there's all kind of cool back matter.
Nice.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
that's so good. So good.
Okay.
Okay, so I have to know, Mark, which 2 or 3 volumes are you looking forward to the most out of these DC Finest? And then what is on your wish list for stuff in the future that hasn't been announced yet?
Ooh, that's good. So when I'm talking about my favorites, we're talking about just the ones we've covered today or overall?
No, just overall, out of the ones they've announced like 30 different volumes
Oh, of all
so
the ones
far.
they've announced,
yeah.
I'm looking for the science fiction one. I'm looking forward to because it's a true anthology of one-off stories. Yes, from they're not series. Some of them are not series stories. Like the Mystery in Space stuff is just one-shot science fiction stories. Strange Adventures, you get some Captain Comet, but mostly it's just the standalone stories. The Action Comics is Tommy Tomorrow stuff because where else are you going to put Tommy Tomorrow but the science fiction volume? I think that's going to be a blast to just sit down and read because the variety of artists, the variety of stories, you're not going to get tired of that stuff. You can only read so many Justice League stories in a row, but this you could probably blow through in one sitting.
Yeah, totally.
And then in terms
Okay,
of my own wish list,
Yeah.
I would. That's a great question. I would love to see earlier Superboy stuff before the. I mean, they're starting their Superboy run with the material they've got film on. Let me just back and most everybody who's watching this knows this, but just to fill everybody in, DC's film library of negatives and stats that you can print, without restoration, it really only runs to the mid 50s solidly, and then before then it's pretty sporadic, and then there's nothing before about 1952. Covers is even worse. Covers they used to keep separately in files at the production office as black and white stats, and so many of them have been lost over the years. That's why you see truly awful reproductions of covers in some of the Flash volumes, and that we keep doing it. The world's worst Adventure Comics 247 restoration you've ever seen, which looks like it was inked by a Hershey bar. And I finally got them. I'm so proud of myself. I finally just got so tired of the Adventure 247 cover we keep using that I just did it myself. I scanned a high quality copy. I got in there with Photoshop. I fixed it up. So hopefully from now on, when we do Adventure 247, we're using the right cover and not the one inked by the wrong end of the brush. I would love to see some of the earlier Superboy stuff though, because reading that in context, it's I can read some of that stuff in context too, but a lot of my stuff's digital. So you have to flip back and forth between, okay, which issue of Superboy comes next, and then I have to read an issue of Adventure, but I'm not sure which. Then I have to flip back and forth. I love the fact that you can just plow through with that stuff.
That's a great choice.
I would like to see some of the stuff that they didn't finish out in trade paperback format. Like, and just because Mark is here, honestly, the Impulse stuff that wasn't
that'd be
finished.
great. Oh my God, 600 pages of Impulse. That would be awesome.
Yeah, that was like, I love that book. Absolutely.
You could almost fit my entire run, I think, in one of these. You'd come very close. I think I did 25 issues, I think. You could almost fit them all in here.
Because there was an omnibus that got solicited a couple of years ago that they unfortunately canceled.
Right, because again, and this is technological stuff, but that's because we didn't have digital files on that stuff. And once you try to reproduce that kind of stuff in a much bigger format, there's just a period of time in the 90s where what DC has in terms of files that is not quite digital, but not quite analog. Trying to figure out what they're going to do production wise, that stuff just doesn't look great blown up like some of the other stuff. So that's why
Marvel's in the same boat.
Yeah.
It's definitely a weird era in that 90s when they were introducing the new colors. Like
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Until we get those masterwork, man, those are gonna look pretty rough on scans. But, I would love to see that. I'd love to see some of the stuff like the All-Star Squadron. Like, things that there's just so much of DC that hasn't been collected before. I would love to see in this, and they're doing a great job. I mean, with books like this, like kicking it off with something like this, that's awesome, man.
It's so rando, I know, but it's great.
So I mean, there's a little bit of everything. I've seen, whenever we did our video a few months ago, I saw the complaints like, oh, I can't believe they're doing this again. Aren't they tired of doing the same thing over and over again? But then I see books like this, and I'm like, I think there's just something in here for everybody. Of course, Batman Year One is going to sell. That's a no-brainer. Of course, they're going to give us that. But then there's things like this.
Yeah, exactly. That proof of concept to see if this works. I mean, what are some of the other oddball ones we've got? I mean, Peacemaker's a real oddball one.
Peacemaker's is an oddball one too.
Yeah.
Just because it's so different than like the TV show. People are used to the TV show.
Right.
Oh my gosh, somebody said yes. Kyle Rayner Volume 2. All those books that were canceled.
Yeah. Kyle Rayner stuff would be great. Connor Hawk stuff would be cool. That
Hawkman, as convoluted as it is
there's some really good stuff there that, if you John Ostrander stuff on that was great. The John Ostrander Spectre was really good. It would be nice to see Denny O'Neil and Dennis Cowan's Question in a format that's not the big expensive omnibus.
Yeah. I'd love to see Challengers of the Unknown in this format too. Because I'm really glad that Chris Cantwell is bringing it back.
Oh, you're going to love it too. You're going to love it. He's doing great.
I can't wait.
He's a great writer. I enjoyed a lot of his stuff. This is a really good one too. I know we have omnis of these, but I hope we get a House of Secrets, House of Mystery too. I love the old DC. Yeah. And in color and anthology, because I had the showcase of those and then I upgraded to the omnis, but I'd love to see that completely go all the way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because you could fold in, you could get to fold in Witching Hour and Tales of the Unexpected and other books like that were being published at the same time that were just as good. I mean, Witching Hour was great for the first year or so when it was a lot of Alex Toth and a lot of Neil Adams. So getting all that stuff together, that'd be what is Amethyst. That's another good one that would be great because you could do. There were two minis, right? There was a 12 and there was a 10 or another 12.
The first one was 12. I don't remember.
And the second was ongoing and it lasted till 18. So you could 30, 22, you could probably fit all of them in one.
And I think with these, there's really no rule. Like some of
there's no wrong answer.
Right. There's some of these are 600 pages. So now the big question is, like, so far, Dom, I think you're the one that has been keeping up with this. Has the price point stayed the same? The retail price point is $39.99?
It has stayed the same for all of them.
I thought it was going to be an introductory price point, like kind of like what Image does with their trade paperbacks. Like, here's volume 1 for $9.99. The rest of the volumes are $17.99 or $18.99. Wow, that's impressive.
I mean, eventually they'll go up because of inflation and whatever, rising costs and stuff. But so far, they're all 40. they're all 40, and even the ones like 0 Hour is like 450 pages or something like that, and then some of these ones are over 600 pages, but they're all keeping it consistent at $40, which is still a huge bang for your buck.
Yeah.
Oh man, I
Do-
forgot about they're doing events. I'd love to see 2001. That's never been collected.
That's
ever.
never been collected, right? That would be great.
I love that stuff. No, yeah, the events. Here we go. This one. That's really cool. And now Marvel's doing the same with Annihilation. They're doing an event epic collection.
Mhm.
Cool.
So this is 94.
I guess. Go ahead, Omar. Sorry.
I was just gonna say this is they're splitting it up into two because the story is just so big.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because the omnibus is pretty big. So
And it's also $175.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Get the same material for, half the price.
Exactly. Do you think that we could see Vertigo titles not, related to DC characters in this format too, or do you think it's going to be a different?
I don't know. I would guess that if they did Vertigo stuff in this basic format, it probably wouldn't be called DC Finest. I think that they're trying really hard now that they've relaunched Vertigo as an in-house imprint. I think they're doing their best to really rebrand, and part of that is making sure that name gets out there.
Okay.
Again, this is not inside baseball stuff.
Right.
This is just my best educated guess, is that it would probably be Vertigo oriented stuff. That stuff, but it's also different because, with the exception of Constantine and Swamp Thing, right? There's not a lot of crossover element to this. There's not. I mean, one of the beauties, as we talked about with this line, is it's a catch-all per character, right?
Right.
So you get a chance to pull in all the other appearances across the DC universe that these characters were appearing in at the time, and it wasn't quite that same cross-pollinated with the Vertigo stuff. And a lot of the Vertigo stuff was miniseries that lasted 4 issues or what have you. And
Right.
There's just, unless you did I don't even know what title you'd put on a compilation with Shade and the Tattooed Man and, Enigma to throw 3 Vertigo titles together.
Right.
Well, we're doing it with a little bit with that science fiction one, right? Like, so
Yeah.
I think it would work.
Mhm.
I
just don't know what you'd call it, like Vertigo Grab Bag. I don't know what you'd call it.
No, I'm sure you can think of something really good and catchy. Yeah, I'm interested to see how that goes with characters like Swamp Thing, because I mean, surely they'll do a Swamp Thing collection, and Swamp Thing was there before Vertigo, during Vertigo, and then after Vertigo. So that's going to be an interesting type of collection, because they very well could do kind of like what Marvel Epics are doing with the Ultimate line. Like, they have their own trade dress, looking similar to the Epic collections, but also kind of standing on their own. They could very well do a Vertigo Finest.
Yeah.
It's very exciting. I'm excited for them. And people at first were, because of what Mark said earlier and what a lot of us have said, they're very cautious because a lot of lines have started and they ended. But it seems like they actually found something that people are excited about, new readers, and also old readers that have been just asking for a lot of this stuff to be collected in some kind of format. So
yeah, and we finally got to a point where the showcase volumes can be in color, basically, is what these are. So great.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Yep. As long as the powers that be see the sales and understand that maybe some of them aren't going to sell as well as others, but that doesn't mean that they're not bad sellers just because they're not Batman. They just keep on giving us those volumes. That would be great.
Right. Obviously, the Batman volumes are going to sell the most, no matter what.
Yeah.
And everybody knows that science fiction as a blanket is not going to set the world on fire sales-wise, but as long as it does okay, these things are fairly inexpensive to do. They're not to the point where you feel like you're getting ripped off because they cost pennies. It's not that, but they're fairly inexpensive to do, especially when you're able to pull stuff from the archives files or the omnibus files.
Right.
And that
which is why you're getting Justice Society.
Yeah, and that gets me excited to see where this goes, how this takes off, and what the plans will be later on for Omnis and Absolute editions, because I still love those.
Yeah.
So
So
that science fiction stuff, has that been reprinted before?
No, I
Or
don't.
is that just stuff that they had in their film files?
It's stuff they had in their film files. It's probably.
Okay.
I don't know for a fact, but it probably starts at the point where the film files began, so
Okay.
or around that era.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, individually, a lot of those stories have been reprinted here and there over the years, but most of that material you've never seen since it was originally printed.
It's just amazing. I love it.
yep, because I forgot they also have the compendium line too, which is printing like
Oh yeah, big chunks of stuff.
golly,
Starman
Yeah.
and yeah,
1,300, 1,400 pages.
JSA Compendium one is 1,420 pages.
And
Yeah.
that's mapped different, and that's what gets me excited. I don't know about you guys, but that's mapped different than the omnibus edition. There are
Yeah.
books in the JSA compendium that are
Yeah.
not in the omnibus. Which
We've never seen a Day of Judgment by Johns and Smith in those omnibuses, but we're finally
Nope.
getting it reprinted in the compact. So
which kind of makes sense, right? And there are some stories in there that I'm like, why is this in here? But other than that, I'm like, man, this is so cool that they're doing it in a different format, because I do think there are people that buy different things. Like, people like trade paperbacks, people like omnis, and then there's nuts like me that just like it all.
yeah.
I will take one of each. Absolutely. Yeah, man, different mapping gets me excited because it's not the same thing, right? It's like, oh, they're actually putting a lot of thought into these things.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yes, I do too. I want that Kyle Rayner compendium.
Mhm.
I love that era. So, Mark, what are you working on these days before we end today? What is it that you're working on?
Well, all right, sit back, make a sandwich. It's a long list. You got Superman, Batman, World's Finest. You've got JLU, Justice League Unlimited. Final order cutoff is today, so if you need a copy, call your store right now and do it. You've got Action Comics for the next 6 weeks or so. We're doing those as a weekly, and we're about halfway through my run there. World's Finest still going. Yeah, There's other stuff that we haven't announced yet that is cooking. Batman and Robin Year One, obviously. And then there's a couple of projects that we'll probably announce between now and the end of the year, but all of them are dream projects. All of them are just DC saying, what do you feel like doing? Which is great.
What? That's awesome.
That's it. So good.
Well, just keep me in mind whenever you're writing the script to Batman and Robin Year 2,
Right.
Return of the Reaper.
Reaper, yeah. Reaper.
Special
yeah.
consultant credit on there.
Oh, here you can quote me for Batman being a 6 out of 10 occult detective.
No, you're wrong.
This was a lot of fun. I'm so
Yeah.
glad we were able to kick it off with none other than Mark, the walking historian, man.
My pleasure.
we had a comment from, I think it was Arthur Wu, who said it feels like I'm sitting back in my chair in school listening to the greatest teacher on earth or something like that.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
I'll have to come back sometime because I know there's other anecdotes about this material that I either forgot or didn't get a chance to mention as we were going. So,
And, yeah.
Well, you're always welcome back. Absolutely. It's always a pleasure to get to talk to you and just learn so many things, especially like the behind the scenes, because you were there.
Right, exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of that stuff that needs to be captured for posterity.
Yeah, and I think, it helps for people to understand how sometimes it's not so easy to put these things together. And
That's I mean, you cut to the heart of it, right? It is harder than you think. There's so many other factors than just why don't they do a Sergeant Rock one? I'm angry because they're not doing a Sergeant Rock one. Well, just cool your jets. There's probably reasons why. They're in the business of making as much money as they possibly can, which means that they're going to do the stuff that people want to read. So there's always exceptions. There's always weirdness. There's always, like I said, we could be missing 2 issues of film in a Batman run, and therefore it's just easier while we're busy reconstructing that and finding the budget to reconstruct that. We got to do something else. There's all kind of stuff. I know that when I was putting together Camelot 3000 as a trade paperback for the first time, and I was in charge of that, the film we got back, and this is again during that weird gray area of DC production, none of it was blackline artwork. We got a stack of negatives this tall, and some of it was the red plates, and some of it was the blue plates, and some of it was the yellow plates. None of it was the black plates. None of it was in order. and none of it was numbered. So trying just to go through
no.
and rebuild these pages from something like that took a week of my time, and it was insane. Trying to, I mean, again, try thinking about putting together, you know, what was it, 300 pages worth of material where you have no word balloons to go with, you know. So it was just to help you figure out what pages are which. So
And you never know what you're gonna get with that old material too. And it
no,
doesn't, yeah, like you said, the gray area isn't even that old. And
yeah,
I was restoring the For Better or For Worse Sunday pages for
yeah,
the Library of American Comics, and they have all of the black line on separate files, really nice 800 DPI, and all of the color files were 150 DPI.
right, right,
And
right,
it's like, what? Oh no. So I had to do a whole bunch of work to get those up to snuff. And
right.
it's just like it was an unexpected thing. You have no idea until you actually see those files. Like, oh man, well, guess we got to do this.
It's hard to future proof stuff as a
Yeah,
publisher. It's hard to know, you know, everybody makes mistakes and you look back and go, oh my God, why didn't we just scan that stuff in 600 DPI? But we didn't know any better at the time.
yeah. Well,
Um,
and the reason when Lynn Johnson was telling me because they saved all of those files on little floppy
right,
disks.
right.
And like those things, you had to compress them down, and that was the only way of files
Yep.
saving at the time. So it's like that's why they're 150 DPI.
Same reason you don't have an Impulse omnibus at this point. That same sort of, or a lot of that stuff from the late 90s that DC just, the color files and the black and white files just don't match up in terms of DPI.
Yep.
Yeah, that one broke my heart whenever that Impulse was solicited. And then
Your heart.
Yeah.
our
hearts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mark's
Oh,
heart.
My heart too. All right, gentlemen.
Mark does
I
heart
need.
too.
Oh wait. I mean, I'll take time for a compliment from a fan though.
Oh, there's so many. I don't think you have enough time for all these compliments, Mark. I was just highlighting some.
You're
like,
very,
seriously, there
very
are people
kind.
that just love your work, and you know, three of us here are huge fans of
Thank you.
everything you have done, man. Like, yeah. Thank you. This has been a blessing to have you on, and thank you, Dom, for putting it all together, and thank you all for watching too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Remember JLU final cutoff orders today. Remember Batman and Robin Year 1, number 2 is in stores in a couple of weeks. There you go. Oh, thank you. That's very cool. I'm again getting some nice compliments here. Thank you.
Yeah, people love you.
Nice to hear.
All right, Dom, this is your baby.
Have a good one, everybody. We hope to have Mark on as soon as possible to talk about all the books. Have a good one, guys.
And there's my website. Why didn't I think to mention that?
We got you, Mark. We got
And
James.
my
James is
Instagram,
our
Mark
work.
Waid,
Got
yes.
James down.
And Blue Sky. I'm on Blue Sky as well.
Okay,
All right.
there you go.
Over
Thank
on out of
you.
my end.